everybody? It's me, Kirsten, and this is the It's Giving Mystical podcast. And this is your podcast for the week ahead, the week of February 28th, the last day of February. Hello, March. I hear the astrologers say March is going to be wild. Wasn't February wild enough? I missed you guys last week. Thank you for your patience with me. I'm actually still recovering. I don't know if it was the flu or COVID or some other monster thing, but it took me down. And, you know, It's like just what happens. Like when that happens, it happens. And I really fought against it because I was supposed to go to LA and be with two of my best friends, but that didn't happen. And so once I realized that wasn't going to happen, I kind of just surrendered to the experience. I think it was in Julia Cameron's book, The Artist's Way. She talks about, she actually calls it a kriya. And I'm not sure where she gets that word from because I think most of you know the word kriya also means like a movement. I think it's how they define the movements in Kundalini yoga. But Julia Cameron, I'm pretty sure she used the word Kriya, and it really stuck with me at the time. I started all of the work I do with women back with the Artist's Way, and that was 2010, maybe 2008. It was a long time ago. It must have been before 2008 because I remember very clearly reading that idea and the way she described it, whatever she called the word, however she was using the word, was when your soul is crying. And the only way it can move through the transition, like the transformation that the soul is requiring, the only way it can actually accomplish that is to shut the body down. And she says that oftentimes when we're doing deep work, that we'll come to this plateau or this edge or this cliff, and the only way our body can integrate, can move forward, can kind of take on this new way of being is by shutting the body down, like literally shutting down the mainframe. And back in 2009, when Lila was just about a year old, I went with some girlfriends up hiking in New England. And it was like a wellness place. And I had a massage done. And it was a Qigong treatment actually, but it was like Qigong, like working with the meridians, working with energy in the meridians. And it was like something out of a Kung Fu movie because she did this work on my abdomen. And then when I got home, like, a day later, I was so sick, like, really, again, like, top 5 times I've been sick in my life. Really just felt like I got shut down, and that was the time those of you who know about the dream I had about Jesus, which is, like, a whole other funny story. When I had that dream, it was when I was in the thick of that fever, and that's just an interesting thing, and what's even more interesting is that I was doing some work on the meridians right before I got sick, and I remember thinking to myself as I was doing it, "Wow, you haven't, like, worked with your stomach and your meridians in a very long time. I wonder if it's going to cause some kind of change." And lo and behold, a few days later, actually 24 hours later, I got incredibly sick, and I literally got out of bed 5 days later, and I've still been recovering since, like, Sunday or Monday. So, I tell you all of these dramas of my life because there's something interesting happening now. A lot of the astrologers will tell you to look back 16 years, like what was happening in your life 16 years. And when you're paying attention, some of the beauties of astrology, however you feel about it, the system itself offers you kind of glimpses into these patterns in our lives. And I thought it was very interesting that I knew there was going to be some kind of impact. I knew that I'm in this moment of profound change in my own life and in my own being. I know that the world is in a moment of profound change. And I was very, like, devastated by getting sick, but also so curious about getting sick. So curious about, because knock on wood, I haven't been sick like that literally in decades, a decade. And it really took me down. And all I could think about was this idea of my soul is trying to accomplish something that it can't accomplish with my normal functioning. My body really needed to kind of shut down and go dark, go dormant, while my soul worked out what it had to work out, while the energy that needed to be moved around, because that's what meridian work, that's what Qigong, practices or Qigong treatments will do to your system. And I will tell you that as I kind of lay there, my feverish dreams, as I laid there, I really began to kind of dismantle some thoughts, some patterns I had about some things that were happening in my life. And as I'm recovering, I see things very differently. And that is such a blessing. Is it easy? Usually, no. Usually, when our perspective shifts and we're able to see clearly the pattern that we've been living in whatever dimension, usually the revelation around that is both amazing and liberating and heartbreaking at the same time. It's interesting, the kind of creatures we are. We really do seek liberation, and yet at the same time, liberation is so unnerving and ungrounding. And so there's a little bit of a dance to be done there, right? It's kind of balancing the sense of grounded in something deeper and bigger than yourself so that you can liberate this little part of this little corner of the world that is you. So that was on my mind. I wanted to kind of share that with you, even though it really shut me down. I wonder if you have experiences like that, where you have moments where the body really does do its own work in your spiritual evolution. I think that's happening on the daily, obviously. It's happening with every breath in many ways. But there is something about these little chapters, these bookmarks. And I really feel this. It's so interesting because I really feel that whatever needed to happen these last 2 weeks of February, my body wanted me out for it. Like my body was like, you shut down for a minute. Come back in March. Come back and see us in March. So that's just an interesting dynamic. It's this moment for you, or maybe it's another moment for you, but honoring the fact that really all things are for us. All things are for us. And there's something about the world constantly presenting us with data, like with just like, oh, interesting. Oh, interesting. Like, look at this, look at this, look at this way. And I do believe in service to liberation and service to the idea of liberating not just your soul, your heart, but love, energy, flow, connection, peace, all of the good ones, truth. Okay, so that's something that happened. The other thing I wanted to talk about really quickly was momentum. One of the things that really came into my field over these past couple weeks is this reflection around the idea of momentum. I put this video on TikTok. It was like a nothing video. It was like a me being like, does anyone else have this weird urge to not purchase more things? Like it was like literally a throwaway thing I did. I don't even know why I put it out there, to be honest. It has gone viral, so it's got like over 100,000 views and people keep commenting on it. People are very like activated by it. And I've never, me, I'm like sitting in my corner. I've never had anything go viral before. And this was such a non-event. So I was just kind of watching it with curiosity and all the comments were like really positive and people agreeing mostly. And so it's like just this kind of benign thing. But I was watching it and what was really interesting because my kids were watching it, they were laughing so hard at this, but we were watching it, and it's so interesting how numbers are such this beautiful example of momentum, of magnetism of the universe. And you think about this idea of billionaires as well. So it's like the numbers start off slow, and then once they hit these certain like tipping points or these bumps in the graph, they accelerate, right? There's like exponential growth. And I was watching that happen with this video. I thought that was really interesting. And then I was thinking about how that also relates to billionaires. Like there's some more billionaires than there ever were. There's something about this idea of how we really are in this like illusion. And when things drop into our reality, they really develop their own unfolding, their own momentum. And so both those things were on my mind. Just the idea of the way that numbers kind of cling to each other and the exponential growth and how once something starts to kind of roll downhill, how it just picks up steam so quickly. And then I have these 2 capis, like, hanging ornaments from my trees, and they were very tangled, and I've tried to untangle them a bunch of times, and, like, I walk by them and try to untangle them, and while I was homesick, I literally had no energy, so I was, like, wandering around my yard. That was my big outing for the day, and I was like, "Get your glasses and untangle this, like, just make these look nice." So, I got my glasses and I was, like, untangling, and at first, it was impossible, right? Like, it was this impossible knot, and you've had this experience, I'm sure. You have this thing that's tangled, and it's like, "Wow, I'll never untangle this." And you start to untangle it, and then you make a little bit of progress, and then one more thing comes in, and then all of a sudden, the whole thing unravels in your hands. Have you had that experience, like, with a necklace or a knot of some kind? And it also made me think of momentum. It's like when you put your energy, your beautiful sacred energy towards a thing, how if you just kinda keep attending to it, even if it feels like this will never change, even if the growth feels really slow at first, there's something about the continued devotional attention where something gets triggered. I don't know if it's the energy, I don't know exactly what it is, but it's an interesting idea. Can you feel it? Like, you kind of attention, attention, oh, and all of a sudden there's so much larger energy that gets joined in your attempt. The other example, while I was kind of having these daydreams about this, my whole family was at, I think it was an Easter event, and we always play games together. And someone had brought this game that was made up of like solo cups and ping pong balls and straws, and it was like a combination of weird challenges you would do. And one of the challenges was to like flip 5 cups into each other. It's not important really what it was. But there were maybe like 15 of us there. We all tried to do it. None of us came even close. We couldn't get the first one like within the time. And my uncle's like kept going back to it. And he went back to it again, and then he did it. And this was the most amazing part. Once he did it, we were all like, "Well, I wanna try again." And once he did it, once we saw him do it, all of a sudden we all did it. Like, no one failed it again. There's something about, and I don't know, like, exactly where I'm going with this, but I want you just to feel this idea that there's so much power in staying with a thing and believing it can be done. The energy that joins you there, the momentum that picks up is really important. So whatever the thing is that's on your heart, whatever the thing is that feels like a challenge or a struggle for you, I invite you to just kind of bring your attention to it over and over again. Like a garden is the same way, right? Like nothing's happening and then all of a sudden everything's happening. There's something so important about I'm going to try and I'm going to try and I'm going to try, and the universe rewards that. Energy rewards that. There's something about the call, the kind of siren call to join you in this discovery. So I say to you and I say to me, whatever the thing is that you're afraid of or that you yearn for, that you care about or that you want to do, just begin it. Just begin it and stay with it and stay with it. And I promise you, if you stay with it, the momentum will build on its own. So wherever you are, I just want to offer that theme to you. Nothing is impossible. Like, really, 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 nothing is impossible. And there's something about not turning away from the things we want because we're not sure how we'll get them, and keep turning towards the light. Like, keep turning towards the light, keep turning towards your desires. I'm just going to stay with this. I'm going to trust that if I call for this, the universe is calling for this. If this guides my expansion, my art, it's going to guide the expansion and art of the whole world. And there's something really important to remember about that. The other thing I want to tell you, I want to share with you, because I think today or last night maybe was the Pisces new moon. And if you haven't heard about this, a lot of astrologers are talking about how it's this beautiful moment, an incredibly magical, joyful moment of manifestation, moment to plant seeds, moment to work with the energy of the new moon. And I love the Sabian symbols. I don't know if you're familiar with the Sabian symbols, but they're channeled messages that I actually don't know who did it. Was it Edward Casey? That went through and like looked at each degree of the zodiac and channeled an image that came through. I think they were working with the Akasha, whoever it was. And there's an image, like a contemplation point for every degree of the zodiac. So if you don't know those, they're fascinating. I love working with them. But I wanted to look up the Sabian symbol for this new moon, and it is the race begins, intent on outdistancing his rivals. A jockey spurs his horse to great speed. Now, this is a neutral image. So I'm going to read it to you again. The race begins, intent on outdistancing his rivals. A jockey spurs his horse to great speed. This is a neutral image. I'm saying that last part. This is a neutral image because these images, these symbols, are neutral in and of themselves. We assign the meaning, our movements assign the meaning. So the energy here is energy of great momentum and speed and action and desire and effort. But whether that feels like something that is actually wasted or overly competitive or vindictive is one possibility. Whether that's great activation and excitement and momentum is another interpretation, and probably a million other versions. As many of you hearing this, there are interpretations of that image. But I offer it to you because it's this brilliant contemplation point for the new moon. So as you sit here and think about the energy that you're bringing to this end of the month, that you're bringing to the new moon, I offer you this image to sit with and just contemplation, right? So sit and bring the image to mind and let it unfold. Let it unfold with your energy, let it unfold with your daydreaming, let it unfold in your journal. See what comes here, because there's something, what I feel from it immediately is a great alivening. And it has something to do with this momentum. There's something around what we're all focusing on, what we're all bringing our energy to, and how it's beginning to kind of seed itself into something bigger than the individual devotion to it. I say that very broadly on purpose. Okay, so all of that said, The card I pulled for us this week is the Four of Pentacles. Now, the Four of Pentacles is a double dose of earth energy and a double dose of stability. Pentacles are earth, and four is earth and stability. And so when we have the Four of Pentacles, there's a real sense of staying still, which is interesting because we got like one idea out last week, but the idea was suspension, this idea of just pause. And my own experience of that was profound. And I'm so grateful for life, grateful for my angels, grateful for my guides, grateful for this universe that I get to be incarnate in. But I wonder what your experience of that was, your experience of suspension was. I wonder what was kind of holding you in place, maybe even against your will, or what thing was stalled when you hoped it would go, and where you are now with it. Like, how does momentum play into that? The Four of Pentacles is very aware of our resources. So that's the other thing with earth energy. Like, where is my money? Where is my food? Where is my house? Where are my things? There's a great awareness, a great sense of these are the things that make up my earthly experience. These are the things I can touch and hold and name in my life. And the Four of Pentacles, really the energetic is a holding on, a holding still. And again, that's a neutral idea. So to hold back with my resources, to take a moment and gauge the stability of my resources is a neutral act. Can it be miserly and greedy and like isolationist? 100%. Can it be intelligent and smart and thoughtful? 100%. So again, could it be a thousand other things? Yes, yes, and yes, and yes. When I say to you that is a moment for you to be aware of your resources and to stay still with them, what comes to you? To go back to that viral video, like I just literally what I said on the video was, I'm obviously boycotting. The 28th is coming up. If that's something that matters to you and is relevant for you, then that is a great example of the Four of Pentacles. Right on the 28th, we hold our resources back. We boycott. We speak with our money. We share our resources in alignment with our values, right? So we're not careless about how our use of resources aligns or doesn't align with our values. So that's an example of that, but in this video, I was like, I'm obviously boycotting and I hear all that, but I also have this very interesting thing happening where I'm not interested in purchasing new stuff. And it could be my age, it could be the moment I'm in, but it feels bigger than that. And what I said in the video was it out of nowhere, I have a very different relationship to buying things, not just spending money, but like where I buy things, how many things I buy. And maybe the dopamine hit or the interest in shopping has just like left me. And it doesn't feel like this idea of just a moment in time. It feels like, no, I don't want to live that way anymore. That's what I said on this viral video. Everybody's like, "Me too, me too, me too, me too, me too, me too." And it was interesting because it's kind of this moment of some people are afraid, some people are unable, they don't have extra spending money right now. Some people are really turning to reusing, recycling, repurposing. Some people are really turning to art and much more interested in making things in their space versus purchasing things in their space. Some people are interested in keeping their money in the local economy. Some people are making political statements with their money. But there's all these sociological factors coming together in this sense of shared, I'm waiting. Like, I don't need to be careless with my resources. I am getting very intentional in how I spend my money. And what's interesting, because one of the things that's coming up for me is I'm having a very felt sense of the earth and a very felt sense of how quickly we're burning through resources. And I'm not an alarmist. I think most of you know that with in regards to anything, really. But I have this sense of like I want to contribute to the health of this earth. And what does that mean? That means I'm going to be more thoughtful about how I consume. I'm going to be more thoughtful about what I spend money on. I'm going to be more thoughtful about how I tend to my space. So that's the impulse. That's where the impulse feels most alive for me. I don't want to contribute to carelessness, if that makes sense, with my resources. And I want to do honor to this earth. I feel that really deeply. And my body has a very strong reaction to that. But I think it's interesting that so many people, for their own reasons, are coming to this moment where I'm going to take count and stock of my resources. And I'm going to be thoughtful about what I do. I'm going to pause before I give them away, before I share them. I'm going to keep them here. I'm going to worry about my stability, my safety. And what's interesting is that could feel again like isolationist, right? Like I'm not spending money, I'm staying home, I'm gardening. But the other thing I really heard in all of these comments, I mean, there's like thousands and thousands of comments on this thing. On all these other comments, what I heard was the sense of my community. Like, not just am I holding my resources back because I'm locking myself in my house until the end of days is over, but a sense of how am I preparing my community? How am I caring for those who are more vulnerable by having more to share? There's something really interesting about that. Doesn't have, some people have felt really afraid and feel very afraid, but mostly there's this kind of reevaluation of where's my community and who am I here to tend to? Who am I? What is my domain? Right back to that emperor energy. What is my domain and how am I tending to it? And what is the state of my boundaries? And where do my fences need to be opened up? And where do my fences need to come down? And where do my fences need to be bolstered? Like, what's happening? What's happening in my world? So the Four of Pentacles, I've told you guys this last time I pulled this card, I told the story, but this card really has always had like a miserly feeling to me. And one of the women I first taught tarot to said, I love this card because I love the idea that I have enough and that when I'm ready to share, I can give it freely. And she really did fundamentally open my eyes to an aspect of this card, which is why studying tarot is so beautiful, which is why studying tarot with a group of people is so interesting. There's so many beautiful perspectives, like rich perspectives. The tarot is a doorway for all of us, and we all are going to see it differently. So, again, I encourage you to take the Four of Pentacles out of your deck, to sit with it, to put it on your altar, to contemplate, to direct revelation, to spend time with it. Because there's something really interesting happening about how we tend to our resources. This is another thing I've been thinking about with my own work, my own business. I'm very content and I wonder about ambition. And the more I begin to think about ambition as something that I do not just to make my own life more rich, more abundant, but because then I'm able to serve my community with more abundance, to serve the people who don't have access to what I have access to more generously. And so there's something really interesting happening in this recalibration. And I'll just the last thing I'll say is like that year we just lived through, it really was trying to bring us back into our bodies. And I think it probably achieved it more than maybe you recognize unless you're actively tracking that. Because as we're more in our bodies, we're more aware of our food, we're more aware of our environments, we're more aware of the earth. As we drop into our body, as our body becomes something divine to be in devotion to, something, some sacred companion on this journey, it will change our relation to all material things. I saw an article, I really do think it was an article on how to TikTok, about how the vibrational resonance of materials, right? How people are starting to really understand that the materials you use in your home, the materials you use on your body, the clothes you wear, the things you surround yourself with, like we all know they have vibrational resonance. We all know what it's like to walk into a mall these days or to walk into a public place. Maybe you don't. I do. I have a very strong reaction to being in certain spaces, certain like capitalist driven spaces. I really feel physically ill in these spaces. And it's not because I don't like people and it's not because, I don't like beauty. It's because there's some beat, there's some pulse in that space that is depleting, that is not nourishing, the opposite of nourishing, whatever that would be. And so there's something about becoming aware of our environments and how we are in co-resonance with all things. And I guess this week, the question would be how are you in co resonance with your materials? Like, how are you aligning the use of your materials with your values? And that's something for you to discover and think about and wonder about. But the tarot is confirming that any part of you that's asking you to think differently about your materiality, about your resources, is asking you that for a reason. There are no mistakes. There's no conflict or challenge or concern or thought or dream or nothing appears in our reality unless it wants to be seen. And the greatest thing we can do is turn towards it, from the mundane to the extraordinary, to turn towards it and say, I'm curious too. I'm with you too. I see you. I accept you here in my space as a teacher. There's something very powerful about that. So this week, let your resources be your teacher. Let your somatic experience of your resources be your teacher. So when you sit in quiet with your body and you think about your money, you think about food, you think about the earth, what gets bubbled up? Like, what is your attention drawn to? Where are you out of alignment with your values in terms of how you're bleeding out resources? And resources can be energy as well. So it's things we can name, it's things we can touch, but it's our movements. It's our movements with the world. So it's the things that we drive our energy into. Those are our resources. Like how we, buy, sell, and exchange out in the world, with the earth. Huh. All right. What else can I tell you? I'm delayed with my community, but I knew that was gonna happen. Like that's why I said March, but I knew that I was gonna have to really, I don't know, I just knew it was coming. I knew something was shutting me down in February. So I'm back on the saddle. That feels really good. Shaman school, again, we still have a couple spots left. People are really asking about it. I'm so excited about it. I feel such joy when I think of gathering with this group of people and with Steven in at Salt House starting in, I think our first class will be in August. And I'm just really excited about it. Our first 4-day weekend will be in August. I promise I'm getting that webpage up today. And then the only other thing is the podcast. I've been thinking about it a lot. What do you want? Like, what would you like to hear on the podcast? Would you like to hear conversations or interviews? Would you like to hear readings? Would you like to hear dives on modalities or cards, or like what would light you up? If you have any thoughts or anything that you're kind of craving or anything that would support your journey, let me know, because if it kind of works and it feels like something that's a big yes for me, I would love to add new aspects to this, new dimensions to this, to just kind of keep our community and conversation going, because the world needs that now. We need community. We need healthy, aligned relationships with our body and with our resources and with our communities. I think things are changing, and I think that that is a good thing, and usually, the best changes are not comfortable ones, but we know when they're right, and there's something about this shift that feels very, very right, even as it is uncomfortable, even as I have moments where I'm afraid. Mostly, I feel excited about a world where things become more real, and even though AI is here, and even though technology is here, there's something that is calling us back to our humanity in a way that I find deeply satisfying. All right, so much love to you and big hugs, and I'll see you in March, our Empress month. What will it be? It will be the Empress, and it will be the Empress plus the Hermit. Hangman, hey you, I see you. Love you guys. Bye.